This session is going to cover spelling instruction, in particular word study. The information that will be shared here is mostly found in Words Their Way, Chapter 1. This is the link that will take you to that chapter. If you have not read it yet, please do that before you begin this session. As you've read in the chapter, it is discussing how spelling is a window into students developing word knowledge. And so what that is telling us is that by looking at students, the way that students are spelling words gives us insight into what they are understanding in terms of the patterns of words. And this helps us with our instruction in phonics and vocabulary, which of course all in turn helps us to move forward with reading and writing instruction. And so as the chapter discusses, we are thinking about a method of teaching spelling that is incorporated into instruction called word study. And as you read about in the chapter, the word study instruction will really be focused and based, or will begin at the point where students are showing you that they are ready to begin. And this will make more sense as we talk about the different stages, how we assess to learn what stage the student is in, and how that in turn will impact your instruction. So when we are talking about word study, we are talking about a type of study that students are engaging in that is active exploration. And through this action that the students are doing, interacting around these different activities, this is what helps them to develop an understanding about the patterns, about how different words work, and all of the different conventions, regularities, et cetera, needed to read and spell and develop the different knowledge and word meanings. And of course, all of that impacts our readers and writers having those understandings. So now go to your PowerPoint that you have opened at the same time as this video and view this video of the author of the chapter that you read, which is also out of the book called Words Their Way. And he's going to describe these 5 stages of word study and how you kind of determine where you begin with this instruction. So please do that now and then come back to this session. Something else that was discussed in the chapter is the idea that often as teachers, we are giving students different rules of spelling or different, we are trying to be helpful by giving them different rules or different rhymes, different ways of helping them remember how words work. For example, here's an example where a teacher might say, remember the magic E. If you see the E at the end of a word, it makes the vowel have a long sound. And so we call it the magic E or the bossy E because it tells that vowel to be long. For example, in the word lake, the magic E is silent, but it's making the A be a long vowel. And so if this is a rule that you're teaching your students and they begin to rely on this rule when they're looking at words and trying to solve an unknown word, then let's see how often that rule works. And this is kind of the demonstration of how we might not want to approach this spelling instruction in this way. So out of all of those words with the quote unquote magic E at the end, the only ones that this pattern truly fit was in like and take. And so if this is a rule that we're reinforcing with our students, then we can see that this will not be reliable, and it will honestly lead them astray when it comes to giving them the most effective strategies for what to do when they come to unknown words. And so right away, what this should be telling us is that, okay, maybe it's not about giving them different rhymes and rules about what we would expect to see in our high frequency words. And it's just about giving them a way to understand these words, to provide, like we're saying, this word study instruction, where there is the focus on patterns and consistencies rather than the different rules that come up that we hear so often in classrooms. So what does this look like? If we're thinking about word study instruction and really seeing word study as what we would be basically doing in place of typical or what we often think of as just regular spelling instruction, which might be those word lists and different, like these rules of spelling and how you would teach students just by looking at different words without a real pattern or purpose behind the words that you're choosing. In this case, we're thinking about a process of word study instruction that, depending on the student's level, their stage of development, will look a bit different. At the beginning, this is what we would expect to see when we're seeing students making attempts at spelling. Early on, they're doing an alphabetic match of letters. When given the word fish, these are the letters that I hear most, these are the sounds that I hear most clearly represented by these letters. So an alphabetic match. A little bit later on, we start seeing students attempting to use patterns, letter and syllable patterns that might look like this, an attempt for snake or popping. They're getting very close, understanding that there is a pattern there, but still not completely accurate. Later on, we still see some spelling errors, but of course the words are more complex and might be more words related to within a context, like with an academic type vocabulary such as chlorophyll, a more complex word such as invitation. And so this gives us an idea of how the students are developing their spelling skills over time, understanding that there's still mistakes being made at higher levels. It just looks a little different in terms of the way that that the students are showing those errors. So you saw this in the chapter as well. It's giving us an idea of the spelling stages and how they correspond to the reading stages. And then within the text, Words Their Way, it is talking about where these different stages are discussed in the chapters. And so what we're looking at here, just like we keep talking about, it begins early on with the emergent stage, with the alphabetic kind of attempts that students are making, that we would expect to see this emergent stage happening between pre-kindergarten to kindergarten. And so those are emergent readers, and it progresses on through grade 2 through grade 4, all the way grades 5 and up, where you're looking at more complex spelling patterns and having some, your instruction is in the advanced stages. And so of course, your activities would be based on these types of words. And so as we move forward, our objective would be, okay, let's see, how do we assess to learn what spelling stage my student is in? As you can see, there's a lot of overlap between some of these stages. And so we need to get specific to really pinpoint what stage are our students in, and in turn, how that will then impact our instruction for each of our students. And so how will we do that? We will utilize the Words Their Way spelling assessment as a tool to tell us to learn which stage they are in. And so the rest of this session will be focused on demonstrating this assessment and helping you learn how to score it and analyze it to then plan appropriate activities for your students. And so this would be an assessment that you could use for your entire class. And just like it's called, it is a spelling assessment. If you go to the link here, it will take you to a full article describing or the chapter describing the assessment, You want to read this prior to administering this assessment. And that way you will fully understand the details of it, and also obviously how to score it, how to administer it, and how to analyze it. So with this inventory, spelling inventory, the thing that makes this a useful tool across grade levels is that there are different inventories depending on your students' grade levels. And so you would have to note, what grade level am I working with, to determine which inventory you would use. So kindergarten through third, primary spelling inventory. And there are the score sheets that go with it. A score sheet for an individual student, as well as for noting your entire classroom scores, and a way of really organizing groups. That it's a lot of material included here. And then we see the elementary spelling inventory. So this is going to be a little more challenging. It says you can use it as early as first grade, but understanding that these are going to be a bit more challenging. And then the upper spelling inventory, upper level spelling inventory comes next. And this is for upper elementary, middle school, and high school classrooms. And so each of these are going to get a little more challenging. So you want to study those, be aware of which one you will use, depending on who you will be assessing. So again, a demonstration, because as you work on your case study, as we move forward, this will be one of the assessments that you administer to your own students, to the student that you are working with. And so this is a way of practicing. How does it look? What is the script? What do we say? And how do we score it afterwards? So that's the purpose of the demonstration here. So you have already at this point looked at the article or the chapter from the link in the previous slide. And at this point, you know which assessment you will be using for your student. And so you have your student next to you and you're introducing the assessment. And there's some actual a script here of how you do that. Your next step here, guys, is to actually view a demonstration. And this way you hear what it sounds like. And you see Jackson here doing an example for you of the primary spelling inventory. So right now, go to your PowerPoint that you have opened and click on this link on this slide and view the example, and then come back to the video to continue learning about it. Okay, guys, so you heard the video. You saw cute Jackson hard at work there. He was, as you see in the video, he's doing a few things as he's working on his words. You hear him saying the sounds of the letters. He makes some comments about how some of the letters look. And afterwards gives us a little insight into some of the things he was thinking, even telling us some of the words were easy, even some of the words that he misspelled were easy. And these are all things that are helpful as we are observing and analyzing Jax's work, because for one, it helps me to see, oh man, he has an awesome attitude towards writing, towards making these attempts. He is very confident, even in words that he doesn't completely know, he feels confident about them. And you know, this kind of interaction, just observing this, it helps me to know it's going to be very easy to move forward with instruction with Jackson, to really pinpoint, here are some things that we're working on, but you're so close and you're so confident. I know that pretty soon you're going to have all of this down, and it's going to be as accurate as it is when we see it in a book, as when you write it. And it will be, and we will move forward in that way. So that's a fun way to see an example of, you know, a few things that you observe just by seeing this interaction and seeing this student work through this assessment. So when you look, this is his work here. And so these are all the words. And you also, in a second, will look at the actual list to do a comparison. But when we look more closely and we begin to analyze and score according to the instructions that we are given, here's what we start to notice. Okay, so out of all the words that he attempted, there were 5 that were completely correct. And as you read in the instructions for the assessment and the guidelines, once students miss 5 or 6 words on the list, you want to go ahead and stop, because you know that the list is just getting progressively more challenging. And so we're making a guess that we're just going to keep missing words there. I went just a little bit more than 5 or 6 words because he just kept on everything. He was so confident and wasn't giving up. And I just wanted to see what all he kept on attempting, and it gave us some more insight into what he's able to do. So the more, the better there, but sometimes students get discouraged if they know that they're not getting the words correct. So now we look a little closer, and this is where the analysis part comes in. We're not just simply giving a grade based on how many were correct. And that's what makes this assessment so helpful and so effective in really pinpointing instructional needs. And so now looking at our score sheet, this is the individual score sheet that is included in the chapter as part of the guidelines for the assessment. And so I'm using this to score and analyze Jax's list. And so if you look across, if you look down, actually, all of these are the words from the word list. You see exactly where I stopped after number 17. And because of that, the words from 17 through 26 are marked through, and I adjusted the scoring in those columns as needed, because he will not get, we don't want to lose credit because he was not able to attempt these words. And so that's the first bit of analysis. The second piece is going over to the end to show how many words were spelled correctly out of all of the words he attempted. As we had just seen in the previous slide, there were 5 words that are completely correct. So 5 check marks, 5 out of 26 words, but 17 we know or how many he attempted. Okay, now our closer analysis. So for each word now, we are going through and giving him credit, or just determining what piece of the word, if any part of the word, did he get correct. And so number 1, in fan, did he get the F, which is the initial consonant of the word? Yes, he did. Did he get the N? Yes, he did. Did he get the A, the short vowel in the word? Yes, he did. The only reason this word was not completely spelled correct is because he really stretched it out and said fan and gave himself and put an extra N there. And so very close. But as you see, we're giving him credit for what he did get correct. And so that is what gives him 1 feature point for initial consonant, 1 for final, and 1 for short vowel. Now it's a bit hard to see here, but it is highlighted, the ones that he got correct. So if you look closely, you see the yellow highlighting there on these words. So that's what you do for each one. It is highlighted, or a little check or a circle, when to give credit for whatever part of the word they got correct. So it's easiest when all of the word is spelled correctly, but look at, for example, number 5. He didn't spell hope all the way correctly, but he did get the initial consonant. He got the final consonant. What he did not get was that common long vowel pattern of the O and the E. And so we do not give him credit for this. He did not get any points for that, for the OE, but the points we do give points for the initial and final consonants that he got correct in that word. So again, a great way to look so closely at what the students are doing and and really being able to uncover what are their strengths, what do they already know, and then where do we get a little weaker and where do we pinpoint our instruction. And imagine how helpful this will be when you do this for all of your students and you're analyzing them, and it helps you to place them into small groups to really address needs of different students at different levels. So if you look again, just to continue on, you do this for each of the words that you're analyzing. Let's look at another one before we go on. For example, dream, number 11. So he got the DR correct in dream. And so this is highlighted under the blends that he got correct. However, he didn't get the EA. And so the common long vowel, he did not get a score for that one. And so you're doing that for each of the words. And at the end, you go all the way down to add up how many points did they get for each word within each of these categories. And so that then helps you to very quickly analyze, wow, look at what Jax has under control. He's got these early stages taken care of, the understanding the initial and final consonants in words, understanding the short vowels in words. And now we get to diagraphs. And we see, okay, he missed a couple here. He missed a couple here, and then getting to blends. Actually, in blends, he did quite well. And so if we proceed on to common long vowels, we see that, okay, we didn't get any of those correct. So I'm ready to sit down with Jax tomorrow and begin activities and have opportunities for him to engage in word study around diagraphs, which, by the way, I think would clear up pretty quickly based on how close he was here, getting most of these correct. And then probably moving on pretty quickly to focus on these common long vowels and activities that focus on this area. And so this is how we are scoring the assessment and how we then analyze it to tell us what stage the student falls into in spelling. And so in this case, we see based on where he begins to make some mistakes, he falls into the letter name alphabetic stage in the middle stage there. But we see evidence that he's very close to this within word pattern early stage. And so this is where we need to be careful with placing him in a small group in this middle stage, and him being pretty ready pretty quickly to move on into into a more advanced group that focuses on common long vowels in the within word pattern stages. So this is a great example, a great demonstration of what you might see in your own students. They're very close, but we certainly need to make sure that they have this under control in our instruction before we move on to something else. And so that might happen quickly. It might take a little bit of time, but as teachers, we are working to make those groups flexible and always changing, always fluid, because students do take these on pretty quickly when it comes to after providing these word study activities for them. So with this in mind, we've done this analysis, we're ready to work with him. And so the next question is, what do we do? What activities do we do based on what we know that he needs now that we know what his stage is? And so now, guys, take a second to watch this video of different activities, different word study, spelling instruction. And then we'll see if any of those would fit appropriately for Jax or what we might do for him in particular. So go back to your own PowerPoint, click on the link to watch this video, and come back. So your next step is, again, like we're saying, what activity is appropriate for students in this stage? And so just like we just found out by scoring and analyzing Jackson's word list, he is in the letter name alphabetic stage, the middle of that. And so we saw that he will benefit with activities focused on diagraphs. And here's a couple of activities that fit for that, some examples. A closed sort, categorizing blind sort, where he's working with a peer and putting it into the correct diagraph category. Again, I think this would be pretty quick to clear up for this student, and we would be ready to move him into the within pattern early stage. And so again, keeping in mind, we have to have different activities ready and be constantly observing to see, are we where we need to be with instruction? And so this provided a couple of different examples. Here's the kind of a picture, guys, of what that a closed sort would look like. And by the way, also provided in your PowerPoint is a link that takes you to a great place with it that includes different resources for activities at different stages. And so that's what you will need when you do the next step here. Your activity will now be to practice everything that we just did, but now you'll do it on your own. Okay, and so the example that you just saw was for the primary spelling inventory. This example goes with the upper level spelling inventory. So the words are different, but everything is provided for you here to now score it in the same way we just scored the primary one. And so let me show you what you have, and then you'll be ready to do the activity. So here's the word list. Here are the words and the sentences that go with them, and here is the student's work. So what you will need to do is print the score sheet, which is this right here. So it's in front of you, and use that to look at Robbie's work and to do the same thing we just did with Jackson's. How many words are correct, and then highlight which ones are part correct in the different words, give them the scores, and see how you do on that. Now let me note, and we should all note, by the way, this student's handwriting is not perfect. And this is pretty common for students of this grade level and this stage. And so the best that you can do is interpret the letters to the best of your ability. One thing that is helpful is to look kind of for patterns in the way different letters look, even though they don't look right. If they kind of usually look the same if they are messy. Let's just say that. This is my son's work from a few years ago, so I'm a big critic here. And so with that in mind, one thing that we would note as teachers, if this was your own student, one, you could tell him to do a better job with his handwriting. Two, you would probably know him pretty well and know the pattern of the way that he writes. And so it would be easier for you to analyze it. And so with all that being said, just do your best with going through and scoring. And that is your first step of the activity. And the second step is to determine what spelling stage he is in based on, the score that you did, and provide an example of 2 different activities that would be appropriate for him at that stage. And so your assignment looks like this, and you will of course have this link to get to. There's the word list, there's the assessment that you're analyzing. Here's the score sheet that you want to go through and completely finish up looking at Robbie's word list. Give him his score, find out what stage he is in, and then complete this last stage based on the scoring of his assessment. What spelling stage is he in, and what are 2 appropriate activities based on that stage? And so you'll just fill this in. What stage is he in? And here's 2 activities. And again, you say, well, how do I know which activities to put in there? And that's where this link will help you. Or maybe you can find another resource for different stages from Words Their Way. There are many out there that you are able to utilize. And so that is your assignment for practicing how to analyze this activity, how to score it, and how to use that information to plan for instruction. In your case study, you will actually be able to give this assessment and then go through these same steps with your own student of scoring and planning an activity. So now go ahead and get to work on your activity and be in touch if you have any questions.